554. Type it out.
He probably hasn't gotten it for quite a while.
Yes. That was brilliant.
Rob, that was so funny. Look how funny Rob is.
I was just acknowledging you. I agree with you.
And that's the point where we'll actually start the show.
Yeah.
Right after that.
Did you just make that up, though?
What, the
Yeah,
numbers?
the-
Yes.
that's-
Based on your thing.
That's his brilliance
But
coming
my
through.
thing is like been live since like 3rd grade. Like
Oh,
you just
okay.
made yours up. It's never gonna stick. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
but it's stuck in my head for some reason.
Yeah, mine too.
See, Lee's really fast on the uptake. We're like the response, like we sound dumb when we're coming back on somebody and we just repeat the same word.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just
he's
told
already
you
got-
we were recording.
Oh, yeah, I'm
already.
sorry.
So there goes all of that.
No, I'm sorry.
Can't use any of that.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We'll cut that out.
All right.
Yeah.
What are we? Well, you're a beep. All right.
Cut it out.
Yeah, we need the delay button.
All right. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What's the topic?
What's our lead in?
What have
Who wants to lead us in?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, right? I mean, there's so much content that Lee shared, I shared, and Rob read.
Red.
Yeah, I did nothing, right? Yeah. Well, since I'm a little weenie, I mean, what Lee shared earlier in the week, which I jumped on, was the full text of Benedict. Oh man, I can't read Roman numerals. Wait, Benedict the 14th, 16th.
Yeah.
Wow, I look like an idiot saying that. I knew that was the 16th. Just give
XV.
me a time.
XVII.
SA.
That's 17.
That's 17. See, again, there we are. We look dumb again. Right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's hard.
The church and the scandal of sexual abuse.
Yeah. All right.
That's a real funny, heady topic, right?
It really is. But, you know, we talked about it. We talked about this, you know, when it broke last year.
Well, there's not a lot I've said, but I've really struggled with this privately, and I haven't shared a lot with you guys on this, and it's actually really hurt my faith for quite a while. And so I've been on this private struggle. You know, so these things are very helpful to me. There's been a lot of, you know, I think we should break down what the Pope Emeritus said, but there's also been really good information from Bishop Barron on what should your response be to this, and should you run away from the church? You know. Actually, he recently he just wrote a book on that's going to be published. I think it's already published about this, and I'll look up the book. But it's basically going to be $1 per book because he wants all of the Catholic Church to get it.
If you order more than 20, it's $1 per book.
Yeah,
If you
that's
order
right.
just one for yourself, it's free.
It's
You just
free.
pay shipping.
I wonder if you could just download it digitally.
Maybe, because they have no interest in making money off of it. They
Right.
said any money that's made off of it will go
Yeah.
directly to victims' relief funds.
Yeah,
They just want to get the word out there. It's a
Yeah.
letter, really. He said it's like 125
right.
pages or something. He intended it to be able to be read in like 1 or 2 sittings, and he didn't want it to be this like voluminous thing. He
Yeah.
just wanted to write a letter to people from his pastoral heart. He said it's not an official statement from the church or anything.
Yeah, he said that several times. I covered that several different ways.
He did.
That it is not representing anything that the Council of Bishops or whatever.
Right, but he's such a prominent voice for the Catholic Church in the world today that it's important that he said something about it.
Yeah.
I think when
Yeah.
the scandal really hit and the grand jury report and everything, the complaint of a lot of people was the Church's response at that point,
I agree.
which was very slow and inadequate. And it's good that Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI took some time to write something and has released it now. And Bishop Barron has released this. So it's being addressed. It's not something that I think any of them could, off the cuff address fully other than to say this is deplorable and we renounce it.
Yeah, the book is called Letter to a Suffering Church. And I know I plan on reading it.
Yeah.
It's about 120 pages.
Something like that.
I wonder if, us being in the Pittsburgh region, if we've seen a bigger or heard or felt a larger impact of this than, other parts of the country or other parts of the world. It's almost like we're kind of the epicenter, like Boston would be the first, and then we were number 2 as far as these
Because the grand jury report came
Yes,
from our
right.
Yeah, that
analysis.
really. I mean, the last time this occurred was an early. I think it was Was it 2007 or Bishop Barron? It was right around the time he had that documentary called Catholicism. I don't know if that was in response to the first. There was a first round of these things that went on. I think that was Boston. Is that where the movie Spotlight came from? Where earlier there was
I didn't see Spotlight.
that discussion was this story about reporters, like Watergate type scandal against the Catholic Church, covering up these things, right? So
Mark Ruffalo, right? Isn't it?
yes, yeah, and Michael Keaton from Pittsburgh. So, but where was I going with that?
I never know where you're going.
I have no idea. But I think, yeah, you said Pittsburgh was the epicenter.
No,
I mean,
I wonder,
if
you
we do have the Plushy and Furry convention here, so
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, so why not be the epicenter of this problem, right?
Yes.
So, my struggle with this, I've done a self-evaluation of what was the tipping point for me, and it was one thing that and it does come down to one thing, but I would almost say it's the straw that broke the camel's back. There were a series of things disturbed me. I think what initially disturbed me was, coming into the faith, I felt so comfortable in it, and I felt like I could defend it to anybody, and it just felt like when all this came out, it felt like that was pulled out from under me, and that my debating or my backing of the church and my excitement started winnowing away, because when I go in on something and I go in wholeheartedly, I do it because I know enough about it and I believe in it. And so my belief waned through some of these things. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the story. I think it was old, but it was this story about children going to confession and these things happening during confession.
Mm-hmm.
And what really jarred me with that is when you go into that private moment with a person, you're supposed to be speaking directly to Jesus through the priest, right? Mm-hmm. And the struggle that I had with that, is, and it goes against my own argument, is why would God let bad things happen to people, right? There's an argument, that C.S. Lewis has that discusses at great length. But this is like to the extreme. This is like, oh my gosh, this is like supposed to be one of the holiest moments where you can confess everything, and it's not God allowing it to happen, but it's happening, and it's happening in one of the most holiest places in the church. And that really jarred me. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are just children going in to do the most innocent thing, to proclaim their sins, and they're having bad things like that happen to them. And that's what really threw me off. And I started going into this dark place where, and it was funny, my parents would have this discussion with me. They're not Catholic. They're very supportive of me, more supportive than I ever thought they would. But they asked me about these things. They asked me, wow, there's a lot going on. What do you think about all this? And, I didn't really have a good answer, and it really pissed me off. Mm-hmm. Because I usually do have a good answer, and I didn't have one. I felt exposed. And then I started admitting to him, and I'll tell, I wasn't going to mass. I'm like, I don't even feel comfortable coming in here. I was in a really despondent place. And then talking to them. But the funny argument that I had with them was like, I said, my struggle right now is not that I picked the right thread of Christianity to go through. I'm to the fundamental, is Christianity right? Because if I'm going to be a Christian, it's funny arguing with my parents about it, I have to be Catholic, because that's the root, that's where it started, right? And I said, there's no other choice that I have. I've already done all of the research, it makes sense, right? But my fundamental question was, if this is the root, and this is happening, it just completely disturbed me, right? So, and that's where I was. I know that's really dark for me to be talking about, but that's like my innermost struggle that I've had.
Yeah, but in the Catholic view of the confessional, that is where the line between the faith and humanity becomes a little blurred, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of where the two meet. And so if that is called into question, mm-hmm. it's understandable that shook you to your foundation.
It was hard for me, yeah. But when you listen to Bishop Barron, And, you know, Mike is aware. Mike is the person that holds me accountable about not going to church, and I can't lie to him. So when he asked me in a very annoying sort of way, but I've kind of asked him to do that. So every time.
What mass did you go to this weekend, Rob?
Yeah, he's very.
Did you go to Saturday night?
He doesn't wriggle me. He doesn't give me opening. He doesn't. He just wants to be very specific. He's almost like, you know, I'm an alcoholic or whatever, and you're my
sponsor.
Yeah, he's like my sponsor, right?
We're actually going to be designing a T-shirt based on Mike's catchphase. Get your ass to mass.
Exactly right.
I can see you as like a WWE wrestler.
Yeah. Yes.
Get your ass to mass.
Yeah, right.
That's your catchphrase.
Yeah. So we would constantly at lunch. He would ask me.
Maybe that has to be part of the T-shirt. Mike's face.
Yeah.
No.
Get your ass to mass.
No, we're not going to do that.
Well, how about your ass then?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I like that actually.
Yeah, and what was really funny about all that is I knew he was going to ask me each time, so I would try to take a topic and take control of the conversation so far away from the church about work or something completely different, so the mind would not even go in that direction. Like, I didn't even want to talk about the weekend. I didn't want to talk anything about the weekend, what we did. Like, Mike would say, "Hey, how was your weekend?" And I would just change the subject into something completely different because I knew where that was.
Chickpeas.
Yeah, I know.
Have you seen Chevy brought back the Blazer?
Right? It was because I knew where it was heading every time. We were like, you know, what are you doing? You know, how was your weekend? Because then we would go walk through each day of the week, right? So,
how was your weekend, Rob? No, okay, no, I didn't.
You know, there were a couple days where that actually happened. I just told him up front, I'm like, look, let's just get this out right now. I didn't go. Can we move on, right? So, but no, anyway, no. But I haven't totally run away. Like, I privately have been reading a lot. I've been looking for encouragement. I just was really flustered when I have my son and people that are struggling in their belief, and then I'm starting to struggle. I don't want a lot of people to know about it because, good Lord, I'm supposed to be a leader in the family, right? So I was even struggling talking about it on here but what I come to realize with my prayer is I don't think I'm the only one that struggles, and the other thing is I want to be authentic when I talk. And I don't think enough of us do that. I think we have to be what's called vulnerable. Because I really do believe there's a lot of people that have struggles, and it looks bad if people don't show where they're really at. The person that's actually struggling feels like they're the only one that feels that way. And you know,
a Gallup poll showed that on the surface, at least, almost 40% of Catholics at least considered leaving the church.
That was a mind blow. Yes,
yeah, almost half.
Right.
So yeah, we're not alone.
Yeah.
No.
But building it up, things being shared, like Bishop Barron talking about, I think his best analogy that, you know, started getting me thinking more positively was the Civil War. I don't know if you ever heard his analogy. So Bishop Barron is a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln because of his leadership ability, even when everybody was arguing against him to discontinue the Civil War because so many people were dying, but he was so principled in believing that slavery would never enable America to move forward, and he was willing to move forward with that. He used that analogy with the Catholic Church. He said, you know, in the Civil War, did people, when they didn't agree with slavery, did they get up and say, well, this American experiment isn't working, I'm just going to leave? You know, or did they stay and fight for what America they believe should be?
Right.
And fought through it, right? So we as Catholics should do the same. We should be the agent of change and demand change to occur.
Yeah, and I think part of that is people want to see justice for these ill wills, and they weren't ill wills for these horrible atrocities, and that's not happening. So that's one of the things that Bishop Barron was really pushing as well, was to, you know, keep writing letters, see that justice is brought to these perpetrators.
I like the 3 words he said in that podcast talking about his new book was the real idea behind it is stay and fight.
Yeah.
That he said that's what we have to do, you know, because that's where I struggle. I believe in the Catholic faith. Where I was really struggling was, well, if it's that bad here, is Christianity just all bad for me? Like, is it just it's the wrong thing, right? So I was so fundamental, but I could not, even when I was arguing with my family, I'm like, look, I love you, and I don't believe what they're doing is wrong, but I just told them, I'm like, look, if I'm going to be a Christian, this stuff that's happening, there's no other choice. I'm going to be a Catholic. And they weren't arguing for me not to be a Catholic, but they knew I was struggling. And, but I just got back to, here's why I believe I have to be Catholic if I'm going to be Christian, right? So my fundamental struggle was being a Christian because there was nowhere else for me to go. I just believed that, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway. So, I mean, the book, going full circle to the letter that you sent on Pope Benedict, which was basically, I guess, a kickoff prior to the, would you call that a synod? I don't know what the term is when they have a meeting, when all the bishops got together to discuss in February.
Conference?
Yeah, the bishops' conference.
I was going to say conclave, but
It was a conclave?
Conference. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But it was basically,
We'll go with conclave.
he was basically,
Okay,
Yeah, that's a better
I'll
word.
take it.
this was like kind of a setup before they came in place to kind of, for him to give his point of view of where how he thinks things started.
Yeah, that's got to be tough for him to like try to weigh in on something like this, considering he was like such a short-term pope. And
Yeah,
they're
so what is
supposed
his role, really?
Right. You're supposed to. I thought they were supposed to die in office.
There was a precedent, though, for stepping down. It's happened before.
Has
Just
it?
not for a very long time.
Mm.
And was there like so much mystery around the other time that they stepped down?
It was well before my time.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I have no idea.
But anyway, but I mean, I read the letter as well that or the article that you sent about the letter that he wrote, and it's very, very well written. And there's- I mean,
Oh, he's a great writer, theologian.
He was. I laughed about it. So I got through part of the letter, and I had to break away from it because I'm a really slow reader.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole thing either.
But I revisited it. But Lee sent it as a link through the phone, and I didn't have my phone was dead the other day, and so I just figured I'm going to search for this so I can read it on my in my laptop. Great. Attack of the Dogs.
Oh, I thought it was your stomach.
Yeah.
I did too. Actually, I thought it was mine. I'm like, oh my god.
So when I got it, I kept getting arguments against the letter from Pope Benedict. It was people. So I was reading all of the responses to the letter, which was interesting too. So I mean, because when I read his letter, I read it from his point of view, and I agreed with a lot of the principles. But he really does go out and strike a stand on why he believes things have led to where they have. And the two major things that I got from it, one was this move of the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
He really touched on, what was it, in the 60s?
Yeah.
The church morals was really a foundation around the world, as like these morals are pretty much followed by everybody, but that was challenged in the 60s to where even though people were brought up with that, they were challenging that whole system was the right system. You know, you should be able to do whatever you feel that feels good, right?
Mhm.
Sex is good. You should feel good about it. Sex is love. You know, why can't you just love everybody and do that? And that was not only exposed from the at the level of adults, but it was through sexual education. The introduction of sexual education to kids. His argument.
I feel like we set up our studio in the back room in Animal Friends.
Yeah.
Just adopt the dog
Yeah,
already.
right. Yeah. So, with the sexual education of the kids, started exposing people that became seminarians later on in life
Yeah.
to things that people normally in the past was never necessarily exposed to. So they had that in the back of their mind, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think that these priests or anyone really that sets it that ends up abusing a child comes at it from the viewpoint of, I want to do something evil. What could I do? I'll molest a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not that. It's that they have a disordered perception, right? They're mentally ill, obviously, but it's a disordered perception. Like Father Mike Schmitz has a video about Bruce Jenner and the transgender issue. You guys have watched that one?
Yeah,
No.
that's very, very, very good.
He talks about how their perception is off from reality, but they are trusting their perception and not reality. And he compares it to like an anorexic who their perception is that they're fat, even though they only weigh 90 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is they're not fat, but their perception is that they're fat. So I think that through what Pope Benedict talked about, the sexual revolution and the weakening of morals and the growing acceptance of whatever feels good to you is right, we get people who have a disordered perception of healthy sexuality, and their perception somehow becomes that it can be consensual, that their attraction toward these children is legitimate, and somehow the children can reciprocate that attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like anytime, even just in a normal, healthy courtship, there's like a sort of a game, like a cat and mouse game that goes on, and you flirt and you try to convince the other person somehow to you don't just walk up to each other and say I would like to be in love with you, as would I. There's a back and forth, there's a game, and somehow in their twisted perception, they think that's what's happening here. I think as they groom these children, as they try to influence them inappropriately, like in the confessional, they think that there's a mutual understanding between them. So it isn't just a case of I want to do something evil.
Oh, I see where you're going with
It's
this.
that
Yeah.
they think
Everything's
this
okay.
is okay.
This is normal. It's
Even though
just-
part of them, I'm sure, knows how wrong it is.
Yeah.
They're listening to the part that says this is normal.
Right.
The disordered perception. So it's like that's the real problem, because if it were just a case of rooting out people who are inherently evil, that might not be as hard as rooting out people who legitimately believe that the evil that they're doing is okay, right?
Right.
They can justify it somewhere.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny because it's not funny. Bishop Barron was talking about how it's the tests and the analysis that they do of the priests coming in now
Yeah.
is comparable to getting into the FBI.
Right.
So he's like, this is the Catholic Church now is probably the safest place for children.
That's been said, yeah.
Yeah. Because of trying to root out people like that
Right.
they let in at the time that Pope.
Sure, because
Emeritus-
what were the criteria back then, right? Like, you want to be a priest? Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
that was probably it.
And that
You
was
sure?
from the
You
first
sure?
round of that.
Okay.
I think he said
Can't
around-
be married.
Yeah.
I got that covered.
He said that all of that stuff really went into place around 2002, right? But these reports were really, the majority of it was from way back in the 40s through
Because the
70s.
majority of the abuses
Mhm.
occurred like in the 1980s, right?
Right.
Which is like 20 years after the 1960s sexual revolution.
Right.
So those children are now adults entering the priesthood. So, yeah, I mean, it all fits.
Well, he doesn't mention this, but I believe institutions, the public schools, and colleges very much liberalized during that time as well. And a lot of non-believers were at the helm of teaching positions where they believed, if they didn't believe in God, so they have a couple things in place that they had there that they argued. One is, well, if there's no God, just do whatever you feel. It doesn't matter. There is no moral. There is no one truth. There's
You make your own morality, right?
yeah, we're and this idea that humans aren't separate from animals. We're a complete evolution from some primordial soup. So these urges you have that are sexual, they're natural. You should be able to act down on them, right? So
Wolves have sex with their children, so.
exactly. So I think there's that approach, and students were being taught by these people during the period of time, and they were challenged with that thought. Where, yeah, you were brought up as a Christian or whatever background you are, but what about this, right? Maybe there isn't a God. And maybe we're just here and this is it. Like, why can't you just do what? I mean, there is no moral law, right? There's a right thing and a wrong thing to do because it just makes sense so we get along to each other, but there is no God that gave it to us, right?
Sure, if you cast doubt on the fundamental existence of God, everything is free game. Right?
Exactly.
Everything is-
I agree.
That's kind of the tack the devil was taking at you,
Yes.
Right.
Right.
making you question like this bedrock that you've
Yeah.
built your life on.
And I
Where do you
haven't
go from there?
felt a challenge like that since I was in college and I went to my sociology class. This was just as hard, if not even a little worse, because it basically felt so confident in my faith. And when this all hit me, it just unraveled me to where I'm like, well, where the hell do I go now?
Yeah.
I'm like 48 years old. I've built this knowledge base over this time, and I feel like it was just pulled out from under me. Right?
You're definitely not alone. And
Yeah.
just imagine how
Yeah.
the parish priests felt.
Yes.
That they're not only were they questioning, I'm sure, but they've dedicated their whole life to it, and they constantly wear, a marker to the rest of the world.
Good priests you're talking about.
Yeah, good priests,
Yeah.
parish priests, like people that we know. They not only did they dedicate their lives, but they wear the vestments, or what do they call it, the collar out in public, and other people ridicule them, and even people in their own parish send them letters or whatever and admonish them for things that they didn't have anything to do with.
Right.
It's
gotta be very
so
frustrating.
badly for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just we just attend mass, or we're just part of. They are the mass. So.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, I'm sitting here thinking that part of me really hopes that the one thing that kept you around was knowing that Mike and I would just make fun of you if you left, and not wanting to face that.
Exactly.
Part of me hopes that that's the
Yeah.
one thing that kept you here.
No, absolutely. I mean, the ego did get in the way, right? And that's not something I wanted to overly share because I didn't really want to argue with anybody about it. I was just kind of pissed about it, right? And so I go into my cocoon and I try to find my own way out of it, which is not a good quality to have, to be honest with you. I think the best way to handle these things is to try to go to your brethren that are stronger, that can help lift you up when you're feeling challenged like that and help reassure you or, talk through things. It's really hard to just do this stuff on your own and try to find your way because, Satan loves to have those opportunities to continue to whisper in your ear and to encourage you to continue down this downward hole of agreement on, you're right, this was all wrong. You shouldn't have hitched the wagon with this, right? So, it's a very tough, dark place you can go with these things, and you need encouragement. But
You're taking the other tack. I wasn't talking about Mike and I encouraging you. I
no,
was talking about us.
well, that's how we encourage each other, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's our
pure
sick way
fear.
of working,
I forgot.
right? Exactly.
Fear of ridicule.
Yes. So,
Oh, look at me! I'm Rob. I'm secular. Oh,
I'm secular. Yeah. Look at me. I'm so much more intelligent than everybody else now.
so smart.
Yeah, I'm
You
so
guys are
smart.
morons.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the spaghetti monster. Let's go to straw man.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
The second point that, on that part, he also, with that, he talked about from his German point of view that there was kids were exposed to pornography to show as sex education.
Right.
It even got into the seminary where bishops were showing pornography to priests. I think in the way it was being done was this is what you need to avoid and you need to fight against, right? That's the way they sent it, right? And I guess the original way they used to teach in seminary is how to be able to keep your eyes away from things like that.
Yeah.
So it was a complete flip. And then when you get exposed to things like that, then it's almost like taking a little bit of heroin, right? I think he's like, here, we want you to know what it's like to be a drug addict.
Right.
So we're just going to give you a little bit because this is who you're going to be supporting. So just take a hit, okay?
Right.
And you won't get hooked. Just fight. I think it's the same analogy that he's making with the pornography
I agree.
element, right?
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Especially showing pornography to priests.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be like, oh, is that how the people do it? They order a pizza.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then that 70s quanky music comes on. That's awesome.
Well, we should not order pizzas then.
Right. That's the lesson we learned.
Yeah, I mean, the inner jokester in me. Could you imagine if we were the ones who were like, "Hey, let's show some porn to some priests and see what happens"? I mean, there's that dark, funny humor of mine, like,
Yeah.
you know, where we snicker. We're
Yeah.
like, okay, they think they're going to be watching something really holy. We're just going to flip this on for a second, see what they do, right?
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. Well, the part where he gets really heady, and it was more challenging for me, and I'm sure maybe Lee or you, if you've done the research on it, could pull me into understanding. But there was, prior to the Vatican Council, the church based its morals off of natural law, is what his argument was. And once we got to Vatican II, moral law, it moved from natural law to moral taught from Scripture, and limited itself through Scripture. And
Because that's not the intent of the Bible.
right,
Yeah.
and what I drew from that was that the natural law was very black and white. There was no gray.
So
But
is natural law then Old Testament law?
I think my understanding of natural law was that, you know, I actually don't know.
Isn't the natural law
Yeah.
sort of the law written on men's hearts, which we
Right.
can view through Scripture
Yeah.
for clarification?
Yeah,
But like the Bible's not intended to be a history book or like a text that applies to all situations. The Bible's the story of God loving us from creation to saving us, right?
Mhm.
So, like, there was a lot of twisted sexuality, and the Bible tells us about it because it's part of the story, right?
yes, true. And he takes this to the extreme where he believes what I got from that was when we made that change that you could make decisions. There wasn't as much a black and a white anymore. There were choices you could make, and one was better or worse than the other. So if you have a choice of two bad things, the less bad one is okay versus the worst bad one.
Right. Yeah.
There was and where he really led it to was before you reviewed all the way to the point of martyrdom, you don't do it. If you really hold yourself to the belief, you should die for your belief. And when we got to that point, it was, well, to avoid death, you could do it. It's a less thing to do, and you can stay alive. He really took it to the extreme that, martyrdom was a valued thing that we believed in for our faith when things were taken. That you should never sin in place of saving your life, is what I interpreted out of his life. And then when we moved to this gray area where we could interpret things a little differently, that,
That came off the table.
yeah, exactly.
So what happened was the softening of absolute truth.
Right,
It's in the introduction
Yes.
of relativism,
right.
which just spreads like wildfire then. It's like,
Yes.
if this is the lesser evil to that, then this is the lesser
Yeah.
evil to that, and then there's just all these gradations.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's okay to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think where you mentioned scripturally, moving to the scriptural, there's so many of those examples in there which they can be interpreted differently, and that there's probably even a relativism amongst the church where it headed through, where people had different points of view on that, right? And so they kind of led their own way. There was not an absolute truth that the church was following, I think, is what he's heading towards with what happened with Vatican II.
Right.
So I thought that was a very interesting point, and that really helped unravel and led to the things that happened with the church at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a great observation. I can't remember if there was anything else in particular.
I think this was necessary
Yeah.
to kind of someone try to trace it back. Like, why? From both angles, not
Yeah.
just, Bishop Barron is kind of looking forward, and then I can never remember. Pope Benedict was kind of looking backward.
Yeah.
How did we get here? And in his age and his role, I think it's very important that he did that. And then Bishop Barron's age and his role, and being the Bishop of Los Angeles, I think it's very, being forward looking.
And in many ways, the face of the church, really. He's so out front in the media.
He really is.
Yeah.
And I think it took a lot of courage for him to put that book out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure he's getting some feedback from the other bishops.
I think you're spot on about Benedict too.
Don't speak for me, sort of thing.
Right. Maybe that's why he says that so frequently.
Yeah,
I have no
think so.
authority to speak for
Yeah,
everyone. This is
yeah.
from me. This is from me. Yeah, but Benedict, maybe that is his role as Pope Emeritus, to do things like that. Like he was able to look back, and not with a critical eye, not with a, he's not making excuses or anything. He's just looking back, like logically, and saying this is where it started and this is how it got to here, and just sort of exposing what was really wrong with the church all that time.
And that's exactly the way I read it as well. And
Yeah.
it's factual. It's I mean, it's his findings, but it's not necessarily super critical or trying to find excuses. It's more like here's
factual.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
What I read into it as well. It's very well written and I'm surprised that I'm able to read something like this heavy.
I'm smarter than I
It still
thought.
makes it. I got brains I ain't used yet. So
Yeah, he really jumps into how canon law changed. I mean, because I think the theme of the first round of this happening really was the sexual abuse. And the first round I'm talking about, not what happened this past 2 years where the things were getting exposed. I think the sexual abuse problem was the first round that happened, I don't know, where it was coming out in the fray about 15 years ago. 10, I don't know, I'm giving a rough estimate. But the theme of this period is the cover-up, I think, is more about it, right? Even though they're talking about the sexual abuse, but that was mostly in the past. The question is really, well, the bishop's covering it up and protecting the priests, or however you want to say it, and not exposing them to the authorities and removing them from office.
Yep,
right?
keeping justice from being served against these perpetrators.
Mm-hmm.
So he spends time touching on that and how canon law was interpreted a little differently, and I think that's a little boring to break out, and I frankly don't understand it. So, but I think his whole point is that kind of loosened things up as well. That led to a lot of this confusion, and that led to people not being removed from office in a timely manner. So,
yeah.
But I thought that was very interesting. I'm real excited to hear about Bishop Barron and his defense of the church in the book. I think just to show, when you listen to Bishop Barron, he always pulls out these crazy long words that I've never heard of before.
And French phrases.
French phrases, and the fille de coeur.
Yeah.
And he'll always throw in that accent.
As the French say.
Yeah, as the French say, yeah. But the other part was, where it makes me feel dumb. I mean, even the guy on his podcast, he said, well, this book is about 125 pages. You could probably read it in an hour. I'm like, in an hour?
Yeah.
I'm like, what kind of who's the audience that you're talking to? Am I totally out of my gourd? I mean, am I not supposed to be listening to this podcast?
Is there only one word per page?
Yeah, right. Like 125 pages in an hour. Yeah, that's. I mean, Are you a fast reader, Lee?
No. What happens to me anymore is I get about 2 pages in and I fall asleep. Mm-hmm. So it's an old man problem.
I have the same issue.
Your
eyes get tired, right? Your eyes get tired. I do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
In high school, I took a speed reading class.
Did you?
I did.
Did it work?
Yeah. I mean, I remember some of the takeaways. You read the first and the last sentence of every paragraph,
and you
scan everything in between.
You skip over words like is and are or whatever, and you just kind of take in the meaning as you scan past it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're not pronouncing each word in your head.
And I certainly don't. I am still not a fast reader, but and I wouldn't.
Like 182. I just read your shirt like that.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
What?
I said it out loud, but I read it much faster than that.
That was fast.
I knew what it said before I said it out loud.
But I'll never read, something for pleasure using those techniques that I barely recall from my class in high school. But for certain books, if I get into the middle of a slow chapter, I'll pull that out and shoot through it. But
it's the difference between downing a power bar or enjoying a steak.
Exactly.
Well, cool.
Wow, you nailed it, dude. Yeah, I mean, you could still eat both, but.
Did you ever crumble the power bar on top of the steak?
Ugh.
Ooh, that's It's not a bad idea. Then you cook it like that?
I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Who was the gosh, I can't believe I forgot this guy's name. The guy they play him on YouTube. He's very popular. He's kind of quirky. He's in black and white. He wore a cape.
Fulton Sheen?
Fulton Sheen. There is an excellent.
Kind of quirky.
Yeah, he is a little
He is a little
quirky.
quirky.
Yeah,
Yes.
but he had an excellent broadcast on how to read books. And he went over how he pulls in information, and I highly recommend anybody reading that. He talks about there's these 3 phases that he goes through in a book. I'm not going to give it much justice, but I'll just highlight that when he reads a book the first time, he scans through it fast, and he notes things that are of interest as he's going through it. He doesn't spend any time thinking about it. He just and he notes it, and then whether he earmarks it or whatever. And then the second round, he'll read the details and the things that interested him the most, and he'll really go into that and read that. And then the third round is he meditates on those parts and really tries to digest it. He said you shouldn't spend time trying to do all of it in one sitting, and that's how he was able to obtain knowledge.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Well, what he said was you shouldn't waste your time on books that aren't going to provide you any value, so skim it first. Like, don't spend, if it's a 300-page book, skim it and get the high points of the book. Don't just, try to read every page slowly.
So if you're reading 50 Shades of Grey, just flip to the good
Yeah,
parts.
flip to the good parts,
Got
right.
it.
I think
Got
that's exactly right. So I thought that was good. I haven't tried that, but I need to start doing that. I just feel like when you pay $20 for a book, trying to just skim it and make a determination you're going to throw it out. I mean, it's kind of hard because you just threw some cash down, right? So
Yeah.
I just read that Fulton Sheen, by the way, is getting closer to sainthood. I know the holdup is where his remains are. I think they're in New York, where he was an archbishop, but his home diocese of Peoria, Illinois, wants the remains, and I think it was recently ruled that they can go back to Peoria, which will allow his cause for sainthood to advance.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
Which obviously doesn't change where he is, in eternity. It just changes how we're able to refer to him.
Yeah.
It's not like God is like, can you make a decision, please? I got this guy just waiting here.
Yeah.
He's in purgatory,
Right.
He's been in purgatory a long time. Well, you're outside the space-time continuum, but So wait a minute. So it'll be the Fulton Sheen of Peoria versus Fulton Sheen of Nueva York? Is that
No, it's just he's venerable right now. He's in one of the stages towards sainthood.
Okay.
But when they resolve where his remains are kept, it can continue, and he can be declared a saint finally.
So the 2 miracles have happened?
I think so. I don't know for certain. Don't ask me things that make me look even dumber than I am.
You do that to me all the time.
Well,
So
I'll tell you that. He's another guy that was absolutely ahead of his time.
and you're right about how quirky he is, because the first time I watched him, I'm like, this guy's a kook.
Oh,
Yeah, right, yeah.
What is everybody talking about
I
Fulton
was
Sheen? This
so
is so weird.
Yes, I was so creeped
If
out.
you spend a little time with it, you're like, hey, this guy's
Yeah.
smart. He's
What's-
talking about
yeah.
stuff that concerns me now.
yes,
No,
it
right.
repeats.
Yeah.
It shows that history repeats itself.
Oh, absolutely! Like even the things that they were facing then, the way he presents it, it's like it's exactly the same in the social issues we're facing now.
Right. It's just his delivery and the whole milieu of where he was. How'd you like that?
Oh, that
French
was
word?
Bishop
amazing.
Barron, my
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Of where he was at the time is a little campy, right?
Yeah.
And he'll tell a joke and he'll be like, Jackie and Johnny walked into the candy store.
I know.
Yeah.
And then the chalkboard, and
Yeah.
the whole. But he's, I
think
love to watch him.
I think
Me
what's
too.
crazy though that he did that whole thing live, and his speaking ability was just amazing. Like he didn't pause.
Right. And there was a time when
Yeah.
he was the #1 television personality in America. He was more popular than Milton Berle.
Really?
Yes.
I
Wow.
can see it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mhm.
So he was like nationally syndicated.
Yeah, he was the #1 personality in America. His show was the top.
Wow.
A Catholic bishop in
Wow.
full regalia.
Yeah.
How'd you like that
Wow. Yeah.
That just goes to show how brilliant our grandparents were.
Yeah.
My grandparents weren't Catholic, so count me out.
Yeah, I don't think mine were either. But they had to have watched it, otherwise how could it be number one?
I don't know. I don't think they
There was
did.
nothing else on television. That's why it was
Well, you
number
had
one.
like what
That's right.
4 channels to choose from.
4.
Yeah,
Wow.
It may have been 2 back then. I don't know.
yeah, it was only a couple.
Yeah.
But they had to make a choice of programming, right? So I'm sure they had a lot of other options they could have competed
That's
against.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder what that story is.
Hmm.
Someone will come out with a movie on it. Just like the whole Mr. Rogers. Yeah.
Right.
Same.
Who would play Fulton Sheen?
Ooh. I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
John Cena.
No.
John Cena.
It's much better than, who's the guy that was a New York City firefighter that became an actor?
Dennis Leary?
No.
Did that really happen? Was he a firefighter
No, he's
before?
Boston. He's from Boston.
No.
He was a firefighter before he was a
He's
comedian?
he's very involved with the fire department.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking of Steve Buscemi. I
Oh,
think
he was a firefighter?
Yeah, he was.
I don't even know who he is.
Mr. Pink?
You don't know who Steve
Was he
Buscemi
was he
is?
Mr. Pink in
No,
Reservoir
I-
Dogs?
Yeah.
Or was he,
I don't tip.
I don't remember
What
what
do you
color
mean
he
you don't
was.
tip? I don't tip.
That's such a good movie.
Yeah. I think Steve Buscemi was.
Fargo? You've seen Fargo, right?
Oh,
The little
wow.
guy
I didn't
from
realize.
Fargo?
Man, I know. I just
He's
forgot about
a
it, yeah.
Great
Don't
actor.
you
I
think he
love
would be a
Steve
good
Buscemi.
Fulton Sheen?
Quite possibly.
Wow, my gosh. Actually, yeah, it wouldn't be too far off.
Yeah.
As long as he kept his delivery.
Yeah. Oh, he'd do the work, and he would
Right.
Yeah.
add a little twist.
Wow. He's a looker. I wonder, like, when they were raising him, he's like, I want to go to Hollywood and be an actor. Like, sure, son.
No,
Yeah, good luck with that.
I think he's the guy that started when he was like already 40. He
Oh,
wasn't
really?
had nothing
Okay.
to do with acting, and then
Yeah.
he decided he wanted to be.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is very good. He was in Sopranos, too.
Was he?
No.
Yeah,
think
he
so.
was for 2 years. 1 or 2
He
years.
was on
played-
Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah, but he
Yes.
was on Sopranos for a year. He was his cousin.
Really?
He was let out. When they had that whole year where they were all
I
let
think
out
I
of
remember
jail,
that. Yeah.
he was his cousin that was let out of jail, and he gave him a little piece of the pie. And the guy, yeah,
Oh,
you don't remember
okay.
that? Yeah, he was.
No,
in that.
I don't.
Yeah, he was definitely on
Yeah.
that.
But I think
Yeah.
I think he would do a good Fulton Sheen.
I think guys like us, just middle of the road or slightly below looking guys, don't make it in Hollywood. You got to be either absolutely chiseled, gorgeous, or freaking goofy looking.
Or you have to have a unique look,
Yeah.
like something that sets
Yes.
you apart from like Sarah Jessica Parker. She's not gorgeous. She's attractive,
I'm not a
but
fan.
she has a thing that sets her apart from other ladies that's prominent. And there are other people.
Who's the guy with the smoky eye? Oh, what's his name? There was a song named after him.
Smoky eye.
Well, his one eye is kind of closed. He's African American dude. You know what I'm talking about, right? He's
Yeah,
one of
Forrest-
the,
Forrest Whitaker?
Yes, that's him, Forrest Whitaker. He's one of those guys, like, right? In the beginning.
I was
I never
thinking
heard that called a
Sylvester
smoky
Stallone.
eye.
Huh?
I never heard that called a smoky eye.
Oh, well, it's like when you
Like a
almost got
lazy
something in
eye.
your eye. Yeah, his one eye, like he
Smoky
keeps-
made me think clouded over.
No, what I'm thinking is like when you have something going in your eye, he kind of looks like he's squinting it all the time.
That's really interesting.
I'm thinking of the guy from Friday, the Friday series, Tebow. He definitely has a smoky eye.
Tim Tebow?
No, that was the character's name.
Oh, I didn't know.
Debo, that's it.
Okay.
He's like a super huge guy,
Huh.
and he was the bully of the neighborhood.
I never saw
No.
it.
You never saw any of the Fridays?
No.
Rob?
No, wait.
Okay.
Wait. Oh, yeah.
Ice Cube?
Yeah.
Are they good?
I'm certainly not going to encourage people to watch them, on our podcast, but I thought they were, they were okay at the time when they came
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
They're kind of funny,
Uh-huh.
If you're into the Southern California sort of humor.
Wow,
So-
no, I never watched those. Did you like Barbershop too? Did you watch Barbershop?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think I enjoyed that.
No.
No.
Did you see, more recently, did you see Fist Fight
I didn't even
with
heard
Ice,
of it.
Ice Cube and Charlie Day?
No, I didn't even
They're
heard
both
that.
teachers, and they get into a fist fight in the parking lot.
That's the whole movie?
Oh, no, it's fantastic. You know who Charlie Day is from Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yes.
He's one of the funniest people I've ever seen.
He is,
and
yeah.
it's just a great movie. You got to watch it. You
It's
gotta
like
watch
a
this
cinema movie.
thing. Yeah, it's hilarious.
He's not
Again, I don't recommend it on our podcast,
Yeah.
but there's some spicy language and some,
Yeah. Well, I don't think he would go
drug
up against
use.
Ice Cube. He's not as
There's a
large
reason.
as Ice Cube.
There's a reason.
But
It's-
they're sizably different, right?
they're sizably different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it took me a
Ice
while.
Cube does not look like a guy you would want to
No.
mess with in any
No.
way.
Well, I mean, he started out with NWA.
NWA,
Yeah. It took a while to get past Charlie Day's voice for me.
That's part of what I love about him.
I hated it at first. And
What
then
is
after
it?
a while,
Squeaky or what is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a real high voice, and he talks really
Is
fast.
that really the way he talks?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, I didn't
man.
know if it was him. Or
You've seen Horrible Bosses, right?
Yes.
Oh, that was
that's
years
right.
back. But you're right. That was really, really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Bateman was in it.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great.
And
Yeah.
Bateman, yeah. Jason Sudeikis too, right?
That was him.
Yeah, Jason Sudeikis. Yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah.
really funny.
They're really
too.
good together.
Yeah, they are. He's hilarious.
This is no longer a Catholic podcast. What
It
happened
isn't.
here?
That's okay.
How did we get here? Oh,
Yeah.
Fulton Sheen.
Yeah,
Thanks
we
a lot.
promised.
Yeah, how did we wind out on that?
We promised to be funnier this year.
Did we?
I mean, somebody
did.
said who said Sylvester Stallone should play him?
Fulton
Did
Sheen.
somebody say, yo,
When you said
When you,
when you said something was wrong with the one eye,
Yeah.
I was
Oh, you thought
thinking of
Stallone.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone.
today we're going to be talking about permanence.
Oh, you know, it's not a temporary thing. It's what we call permanence.
That's about it.
Was one go on the chalkboard or
Cat. We're going to write cat down.
If you end up in purgatory,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing.
Oh, the show has gone off the rails.
Yeah, something's wrong. Fortunately, we had like 10 minutes left. Where do we go from here?
All right, take us home, Lee.
Bring it home. Wrap it up.
What is the
Summarize.
big
I don't know what we
what
started
is the
talking
big
about.
idea? What is
It
the
was
big
heavy.
answer?
Oh, okay, I think the biggest takeaway
Yes.
from what I heard Bishop Barron saying was there is never a good reason to leave the Catholic Church because,
Correct.
as you said, if you follow the research through,
Mm-hmm.
it is Christianity. It
Yes.
is what everything is pointing to
Yeah.
as the fountain of truth and grace. God's grace comes to us most wholly
Yes.
in the world through the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Christianity points to the Catholic Church. The sacraments are as we said, the place where heaven and earth meet, and you just can't get that anywhere else. So there's never a reason to leave the Catholic Church. The thing you need to do is fight for it. What did you say the 3 words were? Stand and fight?
Stand and fight. Yeah. Yeah. That's stay and fight. Stay and fight. Stand and fight. But yes, in that point is the way you stay and fight is you pray, you take the Eucharist, you challenge. All of us are sinners, including the priests. The priests aren't identified as holy people. There's many popes that have been identified that did very evil things. So, in the past. So I think you come to that realization. You find that in every walk of life. The church is made of sinners.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody on earth that's perfect. So even the people that are in the church, and I think that's the part you have to come to the realization. You're not going there for the holiness of the people that are in the church that are in those positions. You're there for Jesus, and you have to pray for them, and you pray just as you need to pray for yourself because they have the same challenges that we do, if not maybe more, because there's less that they're allowed to do.
Yeah, and the devil loves to see them fall, right?
Yeah, there's less that they can do than what we do.
And we are all priests in the order of Melchizedek.
Yes.
That's from the Old Testament.
Actually, Bishop Barron said there were 3 things, right? One of them was we're a priest. I can't remember what the 3 were, but he did say that.
I didn't hear that.
Every in that topic, he said we basically all are priests,
I
right?
just stumbled into that one.
Yeah. So
And have on your way to make sure you go to Mass, but on your way there, have a Get Psyched mix that you play on the car radio, right?
Huh.
Listen to "Don't Back Down" by Tom Petty the whole way there.
Wow, that's
Stand
pretty
and
good.
fight, right? Don't back down.
Hey, baby. Why does he always sing through his nose?
Hey, now.
Yeah.
I won't back down.
I'm singing through my nose. I never understood why he was so nasally.
Don't come around here no more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bob Dylan used to do that too. Well, I'm gonna go
The
down.
hard rain's gonna fall.
Come on, Mike, jump in.
I know not what you sing of.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do karaoke anywhere ever? Have you ever?
I've never
No.
done it.
I have one karaoke song. Anytime I'm at a place where they have karaoke, I will sing War Pigs on the karaoke.
Were you really?
But that's it. That's my karaoke song.
Are you really serious when you sing it too?
I
Like
was-
you live in the moment?
My buddy Adam and I went out to the Laurel Highlands one time, and there was this bar right off of the turnpike called the Rusty Buck.
Mhm.
We went there for some drinks the night before. We stayed at the hotel the first night, and then hit the trail in the morning. And there was karaoke there, and there was us and like a bunch of hicks. And so I sang War Pigs, and afterwards, these two guys who were just obliterated came up to me, and they're like, "You're in a band? Because that sounded amazing. You should really." They were like groupies. They were like these hoopy groupies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Hoopy groupie.
Yeah.
Can we buy your drinks?
Yeah, it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you must shock.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I based on that, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, the crowd has spoken.
Right.
Is that the one that goes, dun, dun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generals gathered in their masses,
You can actually-
just like witches act like masses.
You got it down.
Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. That's
Oh, no.
kind of nasally there, but I've got a throat thing happening.
Very good. The
Yeah,
vibrato
that's
is
really good.
right.
Satan laughing spreads his
Ooh, there's
wings.
a little country.
Oh, Lord,
Wow. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Darn it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that hurt my throat. I can only do it once then because my throat is just torn up.
I could just see the whole bar, like they're all talking to each other, like, whoa, who's this
Yeah.
guy?
Except I don't do any of that. I just stand there.
Yeah.
Generals gathered in their masses.
And they go over to the bartender and go, "Hey, is that Freedom Rock?" Sure it is.
Yeah.
Hey, good looking.
Not one person yelled Freebird to you.
Right.
Do Freebird!
Do that one next.